She walks in shadows, cloaked in couture, and once again, she's crying foul. Meghan Markle, once the actress, now the Duchess, returns to the public eye, teary-eyed and trembling, calling it all lies. The tabloids, the bloggers, the palace. Insiders, all liars, all monsters, all against her. She paints herself as the misunderstood heroine in a very modern fairy tale. But if you look closer beneath the media spin, beyond the glossy podcasts and polished interviews, something much stranger begins to take shape, because this isn't just a royal feud. It might be something else entirely. Let's start with the simplest truth, or perhaps the most uncomfortable one. We don't trust Meghan Markle. Not because she's a woman of color, not because she's American, but because the more she speaks, the less her story adds up. She says she wants privacy, yet she signs Netflix deals. She claims she's a hands-on mom, yet key details about her children's births remain ... elusive, and now, what began as palace gossip has exploded into full-blown conspiracy. A tale of hidden birth records, mysteriously altered documents, vanishing hospital data, and the unshakable suspicion that Meghan and Harry's fairytale children might not be quite what or who the world was told they are. Welcome to Montecito, where the air smells like eucalyptus and the truth smells like cover-up. Start with Archie, baby Sussex, the firstborn. A child who should have been the crown jewel of a new, modern monarchy, but his birth certificate told a very different story. At first, Meghan's full name, Rachel Meghan Markle, was there. A legal standard, a mother's right. Then, suddenly, it vanished, wiped clean, replaced by a sterile title, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex, no given name. No surname, just a title, a placeholder. And then, without explanation, it was changed back, not revised, not updated. Corrected, in royal circles. That word, corrected, set off alarm bells because corrections require cause. And no one's ever explained what that cause was. Why would a new mother erase her name from her own child's legal record only to quietly reinsert it days later? The palace shrug. Meghan blamed the institution. But no one offered evidence. To most, it was a strange glitch. But to a growing group of royal sleuths, it was a breadcrumb. The first clue in a much darker mystery. Fast forward 2 years. Another baby. Another birth certificate, another riddle. Lilibet Diana, named for the Queen and the Princess of Hearts. Born in California ... or so they say, but the rumors began almost instantly. The hospital documents the press received. They weren't certified U.S. birth certificates. They were certificates of live birth, documents hospitals hand out as temporary records, not the final legal version issued by the state. And here's the kicker, the final version never surfaced. Legally, it should have, but no one's ever seen it. Not the press, not the palace, not even family. Why? What could possibly be on that paper that they don't want the world to see? And then, another twist. Harry's name, his legal name, was missing from Lilibet's document. Instead of Henry Charles Albert David Windsor, it simply read, His Royal Highness the Duke of Sussex, a royal title. In America, on a legal form, that means absolutely nothing. In a U.S. court, titles are useless if Harry's legal name isn't listed. He could be considered a stranger to his own daughter. No custody, no parental rights, no legal say. And if it were just a clerical error, why hasn't it been fixed? It's been years. Now here's where the theory spirals into something far more bizarre and far more plausible. According to whispers coming out of LA and across the Atlantic, Lilibet wasn't born in California at all. She was born in Colorado. Why does that matter? Because Colorado is one of the most surrogacy-friendly states in the U.S. its laws allow. Intended parents like Harry and Meghan to be listed on a birth certificate without ever naming the surrogate. No disclosure, no paper trail. In contrast, California typically requires a surrogate's name on the initial birth documents. That difference? Massive. It would explain the inconsistencies. It would explain the missing names, and it would explain the sudden corrections and vanishing paperwork. Add in the rumors of a 23-year-old Colorado woman, a surrogate allegedly under tight NDAs, who disappeared from public view after the birth, and the smoke starts to look a lot like fire. In her podcast, Meghan described her second pregnancy as harrowing. She claimed to suffer from postpartum preeclampsia, a serious, often life-threatening condition that can require hospitalization, close monitoring, and extended recovery. But shortly after Lilibet's supposed birth, Meghan was out in public, walking, smiling, glowing, no visible signs of recent trauma. No special care, no precautions. Meanwhile, Harry was in Aspen playing polo. If your wife just endured a life-threatening birth, would you be smiling for the cameras, swinging mallets in the summer sun? It didn't make sense. None of it did. Here's another red flag. The documents that surfaced online, not the official birth certificates, just the hospital forms. The actual state-issued birth certificate, the one with full names, dates, and signatures, still missing. No reporter has ever held it. No palace representative has verified it. And Meghan and Harry, they've never volunteered it. Maybe it's innocent. Maybe it's private. But in the context of royal succession, it's more than just a birth certificate. It's legal proof of who these children are and where they came from, because one day they could inherit titles, property, even power. If it had ended there, perhaps the questions would have faded, but it didn't. It only got stranger. Because when people looked at Archie's certificate again, another pattern started to emerge, one that connected directly to Lilibet's paperwork. Meghan erased herself from Archie's legal record. Then, with Lilibet, Harry's name was essentially erased instead. One child with no mother listed by name, another with no father listed by name. That's not coincidence, that's a legal pattern, a strategy, maybe even a plan. What kind of family dynamic splits its children on paper? Unless it's not about family at all, unless it's about control. Meghan's name is legally tied to Lilibet. Harry's name, or more specifically, his legal identity, is tied to neither. If those relationships were ever tested in court, if custody ever became a battleground, Meghan would be in a far stronger legal position than Harry, which raises another question few have dared to say aloud. Was that the point all along? And then came the rumor that cracked open the entire theory. A woman, young, anonymous, from Colorado. Her name redacted, her face never photographed. Allegedly signed to airtight non-disclosure agreements and disappeared from public view just after the birth of Lilibet. She fit the profile perfectly. She was said to be healthy, discreet, and paid handsomely. If true, it would explain everything. Colorado law allows a surrogate to be fully erased from the final birth certificate. No mention, no history, no trail. Parental rights are assigned directly to the intended mother and father or just one of them. It's clean, quiet, controlled. But only if you know the system, only if you plan it that way. Meanwhile, Harry's name already left off key documents starts to look more like a deliberate omission than a careless oversight. And Meghan, she was listed completely and legally. No titles, no ambiguity, just her full name, sealed and recorded. It locked her in. It locked him out. The question no one wants to ask, was Harry ever meant to be Lilibet's legal father? And that's where things take a darker turn. Whispers have long floated through royal circles about Harry's medical history, specifically a childhood hernia that allegedly affected one of his testicles. It's never been confirmed publicly, but those whispers have persisted for years. If that condition impacted his fertility, it could explain a lot. It would explain the absence of his name on the certificate. It would explain the quiet shift in Meghan's behavior around the time Lilibet was conceived, and it would explain why a surrogate might have been used. More disturbingly, it would also explain why an egg donor or sperm donor might have been brought in. In U.S. law, biology or legal intent is what establishes parental rights. If Harry didn't provide DNA and didn't legally sign off on intent, he has no automatic rights, none. It's not about being royal. It's about being legally recognized. In that context, Harry becomes a non-entity on paper. A title with no authority, and Meghan, she stands alone at the top of the pyramid. If that theory holds, then everything that came after starts to look calculated. The podcast clips, the cheerful interviews, the videos showing Meghan lovingly emailing her children every night. All of it starts to feel like PR armor. Carefully designed moments to protect a more uncomfortable reality, and then there's the emotional thread, something that even casual observers began to notice. Meghan's interactions with Lilibet, captured in limited footage and statements, always seem warmer, more affectionate, more naturally maternal. With Archie, it's different. Distant, polished, controlled. Some think it's just coincidence. Others believe it could stem from biology. If Lilibet was conceived with Meghan's egg and donor sperm while Archie was not biologically connected in the same way, the difference in attachment might not just be imagined. It might be instinctual, harsh, yes, but when you put the timeline, the photos, and the legal documents side by side, the pattern is hard to unsee, and the timeline has more oddities. Meghan once revealed she suffered a miscarriage in July 2020, shortly after she was seen leaving a Beverly Hills clinic described publicly as a dental office. But those close to the scene said otherwise. That specific clinic, insiders noted, is known for high-end fertility treatments, and the pouch Meghan carried. It looked nearly identical to the cooling packs given to women after egg retrieval procedures. The detail was small, but in the context of everything else, it felt rehearsed, a staged moment. A breadcrumb dropped on purpose. If true, it suggests that Meghan had been planning a surrogacy pathway well before Lilibet was born, and perhaps planning to control every legal angle of the process. Then came the birth video, a polished, softly lit moment shared with the world, supposedly showing Meghan after Lilibet's arrival, but it didn't look like a hospital scene. It looked like a set. There were no masks, no doctors, no nurses, no hospital protocols. And this was in California during strict pandemic lockdowns. Hospitals were limiting visitors. Security was tight. Yet here was Meghan, glowing and serene, filmed with cinematic clarity as if none of those restrictions ever existed. Even the hospital where Lilibet was allegedly born released a statement confirming visitor access had been highly restricted during that time. So how did she manage a full film crew in the delivery suite? Who let them in, or were they ever there at all? At this point, the pieces begin falling into place. The missing names on birth certificates, the strange shifts in timeline, the carefully curated health narratives. None of it adds up to a standard birth story, it adds up to a cover story. A plan crafted to present a fantasy while hiding the real structure beneath, and this isn't just about family privacy. These children are in the royal line of succession. That makes this story more than gossip. It makes it constitutional. Because if the children were born via surrogacy, particularly with donor gametes, British law has very specific rules about inheritance and titles. If not disclosed and approved by the monarchy, it could invalidate their succession rights. That would be a scandal of historical proportions, a constitutional crisis. And maybe that's why the details are so scarce, because too much truth could bring the entire Sussex structure crashing down. And then, as if that wasn't enough, Meghan did something that reignited everything. After stepping away from royal duties and agreeing not to use her HRH title publicly, she sent a luxurious gift basket to billionaire beauty mogul Jamie Kern-Lima, but inside, nestled between the champagne and artisanal snacks, was a note, and on it, written clearly and unmistakably, were the words, "With compliments of HRH, the Duchess of Sussex, not Meghan Markle, not Meghan Mountbatten-Windsor, HRH, Her Royal Highness." A title she was supposed to leave behind, a title she promised Queen Elizabeth she would never publicly use again, and just like that, all hell broke loose. Royal watchers erupted, social media exploded, and inside Buckingham Palace, insiders say the reaction was ice cold. If it was a mistake, it was an unbelievably careless one. If it was intentional, it was a declaration of war. Meghan's team rushed to do damage control. They claimed the signature was simply nostalgic. That Meghan had meant no harm, but few bought that explanation. Royal experts were quick to point out that using HRH in any public way, especially on a gift, was a breach of the original agreement forged during Megxit. Titles in the royal world aren't sentimental, they're political, strategic, legally binding. Using one inappropriately is a diplomatic offense. And when paired with the lingering questions about her children's documents and birthrights, it painted a picture of someone who wasn't just clinging to power, but possibly playing a much bigger game. Just when it felt like the chaos had peaked, Meghan lit the fuse again. The note card with the HRH title wasn't just a slip, it was a spark. People weren't calm, they were furious. In the UK, it hit like a slap. This wasn't just nostalgia. This was defiance, and it came with photo evidence. There was no denying it. Meghan had signed a private note using the very title she swore she would stop using. And once again, she sent it public. The palace didn't respond officially, but behind the scenes, the silence was loud. Everyone knew what it meant. She wasn't stepping back, she was digging in, playing by her own rules, and that note wasn't the only red flag. Soon after, Meghan made a rare red carpet appearance, not for herself, but to support media mogul Tyler Perry, the man who famously offered her and Harry refuge. The same Tyler Perry who featured prominently in their Netflix documentary. The same man who said on record that he gave them security because the palace refused. His words weren't just kind, they were sharp, targeted. He said Harry and Meghan had been cut off, that they were being punished for leaving, that the palace had tried to force them back, and that he respected them for walking away, but that interview opened another door. Because if Harry and Meghan were cut off from royal support, how could they afford the lavish life they were living? Who was paying for the round-the-clock protection? The media deals, the staff, and why did so much of their public narrative seem to circle back to control? Then came the bombshell, the Oprah interview. Meghan and Harry went nuclear. They exposed everything: racism, silence, suicidal thoughts. But there was one moment that cracked the world in half. Meghan said that behind palace doors, unnamed royals had questioned how dark Archie's skin would be. That claim set fire to everything. For the first time in modern history, the royal family was being accused of racism by one of their own. The world stopped. Some believed her. Others didn't, but the damage was done. Trust was shattered, and the monarchy's image was suddenly on trial. But hidden beneath all the headlines was another strange thread. Meghan claimed the palace didn't want Archie to have a title, that they refused royal protection, that they stripped him of his birthright, but legally none of that made sense. At the time of his birth, Archie wasn't entitled to a prince title yet, not unless the Queen issued a specific decree. Protection was also tied to active working roles. Meghan and Harry had already begun distancing themselves from that. So, what was really going on? Was it a misunderstanding? Or was it another attempt to reframe the narrative? And the deeper people dug, the stranger it got. Meghan claimed she emailed her children every night, created secret email addresses for them, sent them photos and stories and memories they wouldn't read until they were older. It sounded sweet, but also strange. Why would a mother email her kids daily as if preserving a paper trail? Why go to such lengths to document every moment? It felt less like parenting, more like evidence, a log, a record. Something you'd need in court. And people noticed another shift. In interviews and appearances, Meghan always seemed closer to Lilibet, warmer, more engaged. With Archie, she was distant, colder, smiles that didn't reach her eyes. Was it just the camera angle, or was it something else? Some online theories went further. Some said Archie might not be biologically hers. Others said the bond with Lilibet felt different because Meghan had more control, more certainty, more legal standing, harsh ideas. But the footage told a story, one that didn't match the PR, and then Harry entered the storm. After moving to the US, he launched a full-blown legal war to regain police-level security while in the UK. He said he didn't feel safe, that the system had failed him, that someone wanted history to repeat itself. When asked what that meant, Harry didn't flinch. He said some people didn't care if he lived or died. And then came the chilling quote, "I've discovered that some people want history to repeat itself." It sent shivers through the press. Was he implying what it sounded like? That someone wanted him gone, dead. The backlash was immediate. Some called him paranoid, others called it brave. But one thing was clear: Harry no longer trusted anyone. Not the palace, not the system, not even his father. When asked if he wanted King Charles to intervene, Harry said no. He didn't want help. He wanted the legal process to speak for itself. But deep down, it was obvious he didn't believe the system would protect him. He believed he'd been iced out, silenced, set up. And then came the whispers of divorce. People started noticing the cracks separate public events. Long periods apart, cold glances. Was the Sussex brand splitting in two? Was the fairy tale over? And if it was, what would happen to the children, to the documents, to the rights? If Harry's name was never properly listed on Lilibet's birth certificate, and if Meghan held sole legal custody, then one signature could erase him from her life entirely, and some believed that was the plan from the start. A family built on optics, managed like a brand, and protected with layers of legal smoke, every move rehearsed, every tear timed, every document ... curated. This isn't just royal drama. It's a maze, one-lined with NDAs, forged narratives, missing paperwork, and emotional chess. And at the center of it all, a duchess who says she just wants the truth but seems determined to keep rewriting it. So now, the question lingers, is Meghan playing the victim, or is she playing the long game? Is Harry a trapped husband or just another pawn in a bigger strategy? And are the children truly royal heirs, or the final piece in a very private empire? One thing's for sure, the truth isn't settled. It's hidden behind titles, behind interviews, behind perfectly staged scenes. And maybe, just maybe, behind a signature that never should have been missing in the first place. But the curtain hasn't dropped. In fact, it might just be rising. Because now, in 2025, the whispers have grown louder. Meghan appears more polished than ever, but every move is tracked, every appearance is analyzed. And behind the filtered photos and glowing interviews, the questions only multiply. Why hasn't Harry corrected the birth records? Why haven't they released the full certificates? Why is everything around their children still so ... blurred? If there's nothing to hide, then why so much effort to control what's seen and what isn't? Meanwhile, Harry's legal war over security deepens. He's losing in court, but he keeps fighting. Not just for protection, but for legitimacy. For status, maybe even for relevance. He says it's about his family's safety. But others wonder, is it really about regaining control over a royal identity he never wanted to lose? Some insiders now say that behind the scenes, things are tense, really tense. Rumors of lawyers separate residences, custody conversations, all quietly locked behind California gates. Meghan, they say, is expanding her brand, new projects, strategic partnerships, quietly distancing herself from the royal label but never fully letting it go. Like she's hedging her baits, like she's preparing for a future where she doesn't need the prince anymore. And Harry, he's said to be isolated, angry, torn between two worlds. The one he left behind and the one that may be slipping through his fingers. He wanted freedom. But now it feels like he's been caged by the very escape he thought would save him. And the children, still barely seen, still legally ... complex, still at the center of a storm that most of the world doesn't even realize is happening. It's not just about birth certificates anymore. It's about identity, legacy, power, and truth. Because in this story, the truth seems to be the only thing no one can agree on. Is Meghan the villain, or is she the only one playing the royal game smart enough to survive it? Is Harry being manipulated, or is he just now realizing what he gave up? And if it all crumbles, who ends up with the crown in this twisted game? Of monarchy meets modern media, that's the real question. And it's one that no royal document can answer. Not yet, but make no mistake, the reckoning is coming. Secrets don't stay buried forever. And when the real story finally breaks through the surface, it won't just shake the tabloids. It will send shockwaves through the monarchy, the media, and everything in between. Until then, keep your eyes open, because behind every polished photo, every soft focus interview, every tightly controlled moment, there's something they don't want you to see. And when you finally see it, it won't just change what you think about Meghan and Harry. It'll change what you think about the entire royal machine. So, what do you believe? Is this a story of betrayal, survival, or deception on a royal scale? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because this isn't the end of the story. Not even close. The next chapter is coming. And when it hits, you'll want to be ready.